So I want to dive into some of the wiring underneath what Stuart was talking about, and talking about words and worlds and how we create worlds with our words. And this comes out of, as many of you know, the work I've been doing for the last 10 or 15 years with Fernando Flores and Chauncey Bell has had profound impact on me and how I work in the world. But also comes out of the last Living Between Worlds conversation that Ken and I host, where a couple of people were complaining about talk versus action. Enough talk, we need action. And it struck me that there is no action without talk. We generate ideas, possibilities, agreements, as Stuart was talking about, and coordinate our actions in the world through conversation. So it's fundamental to look at that. Um, some I'm going to skip the history, but about 70 years ago, Austin in the UK said that there's two different kinds of language. There's language that describes something, and there's language that creates something that actually change the social reality. And there are five that I want to talk about here. There may be others on the list, but here you see them. Declarations, very familiar. Wow, time goes fast. The ref calling foul at a basketball game, the justice of the peace saying, "I declare you man and wife," the Supreme Court of the United States overturning 50 years of precedent. These are speech acts that change reality by virtue of the authority of the speaker, either granted or claimed. And we all do this. There are requests and promises, and Stuart was talking about this some, and offers, which are kind of a conditional promise. Competent requests have a what is it, by when is it going to happen, the conditions of satisfaction for fulfillment, and for the sake of what, the reason behind this. And you hear the overlap with Stuart's agreements here. We instituted this at Natural Logic 15 years ago as necessary conditions for a request. And if anybody made a request, including of their superiors, that didn't include these elements, the request would not be accepted just on procedural grounds. And it was rocky at first, but very powerful once we dialed it in. Assertions and assessments really key, because we get confused about this. Honey, it's hot in here. No, it's not. I'm cold. What's that?
An indirect request.
It's an assertion. It's a statement that it's an assessment. It's a subjective interpretation of a person's experience in the world. It's 72 degrees in here is an assertion. It's testable, provable, verifiable, objectively. So there's objective and not. We are assessment creatures. We make interpretations and judgments all the time. They're subjective. We can't not do that, but we get confused between the two of these and we fight over them. And the assessment potentially invites a conversation about, rather than, hey, you're a jerk for saying that, why did you say that? I'm interested to know what brought you to that perception in the world. And it gets more interesting when you're talking about politics, not temperature in the room. Then there's this thing called moods, which Bob Dunham distinguishes from emotions by saying this is kind of the characteristic stance that you're in the world that's there before your feet even hit the ground when you get out of bed in the morning. And interestingly, they are tangled up with assessments because the mood you're in will shape the interpretations that you make. And the interpretations that you make will shape the moods that you find yourself in. And very quickly, here's four kind of familiar moods that you can look at the two axes. Where do you find yourself on this map mostly? Is there a characteristic place that you happen to be? I have my guesses about you all. Chauncey Bell observes that resignation is the dominant mood in organizations in North America.
Wow.
Then think about then walking into that as either a member of the organization, an advisor to the organization, and what becomes possible, and how do you shift interpretations about the future through the conversations that people have. What can you do about moods? You can observe them, which is the place to start. You just start noticing, listening for care in particular, and listening to notice, what is the mood here? Cultivating mood, like a musician cultivates a capacity in their body to bring forth music, or an athlete cultivates capacity, or a gardener cultivates the soil. We use that word to create the conditions for growth to happen. And at an advanced level, there's the possibility of orchestrating mood. Well, we see that orchestras do this. We see how music can move mood in a group of people. The possibility here is to find some serenity in what Fernando Flores calls emotional fortitude in the midst of the turmoil that we are living in and will likely live the rest of our lives in. For me, a part of that has been surrendering prediction addiction, not trying to guess what's going to happen next, but being more of a surfer moving in the world, paying attention, and navigating as best I can the rest of our lives in. For me, a part of that has been surrendering prediction addiction, not trying to guess what's going to happen next, but being more of a surfer, moving in the world, paying attention, and navigating as best I can.